I'm David, I'm 40 years old, and my own parents told me there was no room for me and my two sons at Christmas, but there was room for my brother's colleague and her dog. Before I tell you how a single photo of an $18,000 car I bought them led to 37 missed calls and my father showing up breathless on my doorstep, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. It all started with a phone call, as these things so often do. It was a Tuesday night in early December, the kind of night where the cold seems to seep right through the walls. The wind was howling a mournful tune against the old windows of my small house in suburban Ohio. Inside, though, I'd managed to create a small pocket of warmth. The rich, savory smell of beef chili, simmering for hours, filled the air, a scent that always meant home to my boys. And my boys, Leo, who's 10 and has the serious, thoughtful eyes of an old soul, and Sam, my boisterous 8-year-old ball of energy, were deeply engrossed on the living room floor. They were building an elaborate Lego castle, complete with mismatched towers and a questionable-looking drawbridge. It was their masterpiece. After my divorce a few years back, this was my whole world. The three of us. A small, sometimes messy, but always loving team. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, a sharp, intrusive sound in our peaceful bubble. The screen lit up, displaying a picture of my mom and dad from a cruise they took a decade ago. They looked younger, happier. A pang of nostalgia hit me. I smiled, picking it up as I gave the chili one last stir. "Hey, Mom," I said, my voice cheerful. "How are you guys doing? Getting ready for the big day?" "David, hi, honey," she said. Her voice had that specific, overly bright tone, a brittle cheerfulness that I'd come to recognize as the prelude to bad news. It was the vocal equivalent of walking on eggshells. "Listen, about Christmas." I froze, the heavy wooden spoon paused mid-stir. "Yeah, what about it? The boys can hardly wait." Leo's got the whole road trip mapped out in his notebook down to the minute. He's even scheduled bathroom breaks. I chuckled, hoping to lighten the mood I sensed was coming. There was a pregnant pause. In the background, I could hear the faint, rumbling murmur of my dad's voice, coaching her, probably. "Well, that's the thing," she finally said, her voice dropping into a conspiratorial whisper, as if she were sharing a difficult secret. "This year, it's just not going to work. It's not a good time for a visit." The spoon in my hand suddenly felt like it weighed 100 pounds. "Not a good time? What do you mean? We've never, ever missed a Christmas at your house." "I know, honey, and we feel just terrible about it. Truly," she said, laying the guilt on thick. "But the house is going to be so incredibly full, just bursting at the seams. It's going to be chaotic. With your brother James and his wife Jessica coming, and they might be bringing a friend from James's office. It's just too much. Too much." The words felt foreign in my mouth. "Mom, we're not guests. I'm your son. They're your grandsons. We can sleep on the floor. The boys wouldn't even care." "Oh, David, don't be dramatic," she chided gently, as if I were a teenager. "You know how energetic your boys are. There's a lot to handle. And with Jessica's delicate condition, we just have to be careful. The house isn't that big. It wouldn't be fair to anyone to cram you all in. It would be stressful for everyone." Delicate condition? I thought, what delicate condition? She must have sensed my confusion. "Oh, didn't James tell you? Jessica's pregnant." We're all thrilled. The news was delivered like an afterthought, a footnote in my own exclusion. So that was it. A new grandchild was on the way, and the old ones were already being shuffled out of the picture. I looked out the kitchen window, past my own reflection, into the inky darkness of the driveway. Sitting there, under the cold, unforgiving glare of the security light, was a brand-new pearl-white Honda CR-V. A giant, almost comically large red bow was strapped to the hood. I'd spent nearly an hour getting it to look just right, my fingers numb from the cold. It was their big gift, the solution to all their car troubles, a surprise meant to bring them joy and relief. My throat closed up. A hard, painful lump formed, making it difficult to breathe. "Okay, Mom," I heard myself say, my voice sounding distant and strange. "Yeah, okay, I understand." But I didn't understand. Not at all. And in that moment, I had no earthly idea that this single, dismissive conversation was the first tremor of an earthquake that would not just shake, but completely demolish the foundations of the family I thought I knew. To really get why that phone call felt less like a rejection and more like a betrayal, you have to understand the landscape of my family. It's a geography I've been navigating my whole life, full of hidden valleys of disappointment and a single, glaring mountain named James. From a distance, we were a postcard, a hardworking Midwestern family. But up close, you'd see the picture was always tilted, angled to catch my younger brother in the best possible light. James was the golden child, born with a gravitational pull that drew all parental pride and attention into his orbit. He was the one who got the academic scholarships without seeming to try, the one who went to a prestigious university out of state, the one who married Jessica, a woman whose family had old money and a summer home. He worked in finance, a vague, important-sounding job that involved suits and stock portfolios. He was the sun, a dazzling success story. And I was the moon, reliable, constant, always there in the background, but my light was just a reflection of his. My primary role was to be the responsible one, the steady one, the one who stayed behind. I lived just an hour's drive from my parents, not a 4-hour flight. This proximity made me the designated first responder for the mundane crises of their lives. When my dad's computer got a virus from clicking on a suspicious email, it was my weekend that got torched. When a pipe burst under their kitchen sink on a Wednesday night, it was me, after a 10-hour shift, who was on my hands and knees with a wrench and a bucket. When my mom needed a ride to a colonoscopy, I was the one who took a day off work. And then there was the money. It was never a direct ask. It was always a subtle dance of hints and sighs. "Oh, the electric bill is just shocking this month," my mother would say over the phone, and I knew that was my cue. "Don't worry, Mom. I'll take care of it," I'd say, logging into my online banking. These were always loans. A quiet fiction we all agreed to maintain, even though we all knew the money was never coming back. The favoritism wasn't just about my utility. It was woven into the fabric of our history. I remember my high school graduation. I wasn't a star student like James, but I'd worked hard for my diploma. My party was a small affair in the backyard with a few burgers and a sheet cake. 2 years later, when James graduated as valedictorian, my parents rented out a hall. They hired a caterer. My dad gave a long, tearful speech about James's limitless potential. For my graduation, he'd clapped me on the back and said, "Well done, son. Now you can get a good job." My best friend, Mark, was my only outlet, the only person who saw the full, unvarnished picture. We'd been friends since we were kids, and he had a ringside seat to the David and James show for decades. He was a straight shooter, a quality that was both infuriating and essential. "It's a classic scapegoat and golden child dynamic, man," he told me once, as we were working on the engine of his old pickup truck. "They need you to be the responsible, slightly disappointing one, so they can feel even better about James being the shining star. You're a supporting character in your own family's story." His words stung because they were true. I was telling him about my last visit to my parents' house, just a month or so before the infamous Christmas phone call. I had driven down on a Saturday because my dad said the Wi-Fi router I'd bought and installed for them was on the fritz. I got there, and it turned out he'd just unplugged it to plug in a new reading lamp his book club had given him. It took me less than 5 minutes to diagnose and fix the problem. My mom had promised me my favorite dinner, pot roast, as a thank you. I was actually looking forward to it. I'd been working a lot of overtime, and the thought of a home-cooked meal I didn't have to make myself felt like a luxury. Around 4 p.m., her phone rang. Her entire face lit up in a way I hadn't seen all day. "Oh, Jimmy's on his way," she announced to the room, beaming. "He was in the area for a golf thing and decided to pop over. Isn't that a wonderful surprise?" About 10 minutes later, she came over to me in the living room, patting my arm with a look of feigned apology. "David, honey, you're going to think I'm the worst mother in the world," she began, a phrase that always meant she was about to do something that confirmed she was, in fact, not the best. "I only bought a small roast, just enough for 3. Since James is coming now. Well, you understand." Maybe you could just head on home? We'll do this another time. I just stared at her. I had driven an hour, spent my Saturday afternoon fixing a non-existent problem, all on the promise of dinner. And now I was being uninvited from my own family's table in favor of a surprise visit from the Golden One. I drove all this way, Mom, I said, my voice quiet. I know, and we appreciate it so much, she said, completely missing the point. Drive safe, honey. Mark had just shaken his head when I recounted the story. She kicked you out for pot roast. Let that sink in. And you just left. What was I supposed to do? Make a scene? Yes, he'd exclaimed, throwing a wrench onto a rag. You were supposed to say, no, I'm your son. I'm staying for dinner. You have to teach people how to treat you, Dave. And you've taught your entire family that your time, your feelings, and your presence are completely optional. He was the only person I told about the car. His reaction was predictable. You're nuts, he said flatly. You're buying them an $18,000 car when they just kicked you out over a piece of meat. You're not buying them a car. You're trying to buy their respect. It won't work. It's not like that, I insisted, more to convince myself than him. Their old Buick is a death trap. I'm worried about their safety. And that part was true. The idea wasn't born from a healthy place, but it was triggered by a real gut-wrenching moment of fear and pity. It had happened back in February. It was a miserable, gray, rainy afternoon, the kind of day that makes the world look tired. I was on my way home from the plant, wipers slapping a frantic rhythm, when I saw a familiar, stooped figure on the shoulder of the highway. It was my dad. About a half-mile back, I could see their ancient, boat-sized Buick, steam pouring from under the hood like a dying dragon. I pulled over so fast my tires screeched on the wet pavement. Dad? What on earth are you doing? Get in. He slid into the passenger seat, bringing a wave of cold air and the smell of rain with him. He was soaked through and he looked small, defeated. That was the only word for it. My dad had always been a big, barrel-chested man, full of proud pronouncements and unwavering opinions. But in that moment, he just looked like a sad old man. His shoulders were slumped. His face, usually ruddy, was pale. His hands, which I'd always seen as so strong, were trembling slightly in his lap. The mechanic called an hour ago, he mumbled, staring out at the rain-streaked windshield. Said the engine block is cracked. It would cost more to fix it than the car's ever been worth. He said to just junk it. He sighed, a ragged, empty sound. I don't know what we're going to do, David. We can't afford a new car. Not on our pension. Seeing my father, the patriarch, the man who was supposed to have all the answers, look so utterly helpless and ashamed, it broke something deep inside me. He was ashamed that his car had died, ashamed that he was walking home in the rain, ashamed that he had to be rescued. And I knew in that instant what I had to do. The idea, bold and crazy, bloomed in my mind, fully formed. I was going to fix this. I was going to erase that look of defeat from his face. I was going to buy them a car. A good one. A reliable one. A car that would make my dad stand up straight again. A grand gesture so undeniable that it would finally force them to see my worth. So my obsession began. I became a man on a mission. I told my supervisor at the plant to put my name down for every single overtime shift available. Nights, weekends, holidays. I didn't care. The exhaustion was a dull roar in the background of my life. I started a side business, printing up cheap flyers that said, Dave's Handyman Services. I spent my Saturdays mowing overgrown lawns and my Sundays fixing leaky faucets and replacing broken garbage disposals. I learned more about plumbing from YouTube videos than I ever thought possible. My life shrank. It was work, my boys, and the relentless pursuit of the project. The name I gave the secret savings account I opened. I started packing my own lunches, eating cheap sandwiches in my car between jobs. I canceled my cable subscription and my gym membership. The boys wanted to go to the movies, and I had to tell them, not this month. Guys, Dad's on a budget. The guilt was a sharp pang, but I told myself it was for a greater good. This sacrifice would benefit them in the end by securing my place and therefore their place in the family. After my divorce, every penny had been precious. The legal fees and the cost of setting up a new household had wiped me out. I had primary custody of Leo and Sam, a responsibility I cherished, but it meant my financial margin for error was razor-thin. So this project wasn't just an inconvenience. It was a massive gamble with my own stability. Finally, in late November, after 10 months of grinding, I had it. I walked into the Honda dealership with a cashier's check in my pocket. I found the perfect car. A certified pre-owned CR-V. It was safe. It was practical. Smelled new. The sticker price was $18,450. I'd like to put down a $5,000 deposit, I told the salesman. A young guy named Kevin. His eyebrows shot up. That's a heck of a down payment, sir. It's a Christmas present, I said. A grin I couldn't contain spreading across my face. In that moment, I felt like a king. I felt powerful. I signed the financing agreement for the rest of the amount. The monthly payment would be a stretch, but I'd manage. The thought of my dad's face, of my mom's surprise, was all the fuel I needed. I arranged to pick it up a week before Christmas, to hide it at my house for the big reveal. So when I hung up the phone with my mother after her "no room at the inn" speech, it wasn't just a car sitting in my driveway. It was 10 months of my life. It was skipped movies with my kids. It was aching muscles and sleepless nights. It was a tangible, pearl-white symbol of my love, my effort, my hope. And they had just tossed it aside, sight unseen, for a poodle named Sparky. Mark's voice echoed in my head. You're trying to buy their respect. He was right, and I had just learned, in the cruelest way possible, that it wasn't for sale. Not to me, anyway. Christmas morning dawned cold and brilliantly sunny, the new snow sparkling like a carpet of diamonds. The silence in the house was the first thing I noticed. It was a heavy, unnatural quiet, a stark contrast to the usual joyful chaos of Christmas morning. There was no rush to pack the car, no frantic search for misplaced gifts, no chorus of "Are we there yet?" It was Leo who broke the silence. He appeared in the kitchen doorway, still in his pajamas, his shoulders slumped. He looked smaller than his 10 years. "So we're really not going, Dad?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. He wouldn't meet my eyes. My own carefully constructed composure threatened to crack. I knelt down in front of him, forcing myself to meet his gaze. "No, buddy, not this year." I put my hands on his shoulders, feeling the delicate bones beneath his flannel pajamas. "But hey," I said, injecting a level of cheerfulness into my voice that felt like a foreign language. "That just means we get to have our own super special, top-secret Christmas. Just the Henderson boys. The rules are there are no rules." And I was thinking we could start with snowman-shaped pancakes. A tiny flicker of interest sparked in his eyes. "With chocolate chip buttons?" "With chocolate chip buttons," I confirmed, "and bacon scarves. And way too much syrup." Sam, drawn by the word pancakes, appeared at his brother's side. "Can we watch movies all day?" "It's a mandatory requirement," I declared solemnly. And you know what? Against all odds, we had a good day. A really good day. We made an absolute disaster of the kitchen, a fine layer of flour settling on every surface. The pancakes were misshapen and slightly burnt, but we drowned them in syrup and they tasted like victory. We built a lopsided snowman in the backyard with mismatched rock eyes and a carrot nose that was slightly crooked. We declared him perfect. We curled up on the couch under a mountain of blankets and watched A Christmas Story from start to finish, shouting all the best lines. "You'll shoot your eye out," at the top of our lungs. For hours at a time, I managed to forget. I focused on the feeling of Sam's head tucked under my arm, on the sound of Leo's delighted laugh. I let their simple, uncomplicated joy wash over me, and it was a powerful anesthetic. It was almost enough to numb the hollow ache in my chest. But the quiet moments, when the boys were engrossed in a new video game they'd unwrapped, were landmines. The silence would rush back in, and with it, the thoughts. I found myself reaching for my phone without even thinking, a masochistic impulse I couldn't seem to control. I opened Facebook, It was a parade of perfect families, perfect trees, perfect smiles. And then, at the top of my feed, I saw it. A new post from my brother, James. The caption was almost painfully cheerful. The best Christmas with the best family. Feeling so blessed and full of love. My thumb hovered over the photo album. Don't do it, Dave. Just put the phone down. But I couldn't. I tapped. The first photo was the group shot. They were all there, crammed onto my parents' oversized floral couch. A sea of beaming faces and ugly Christmas sweaters. I saw my mom, beaming, with her arm wrapped possessively around James. I saw my dad, looking pleased. I saw James and a glowing Jessica. But my eyes scanned the rest of the crowd. I recognized my Aunt Carol and Uncle Bob, my cousin Sarah, and then the strangers, a woman with sharp, blonde hair who I vaguely recognized from one of James's office parties. And next to her, a man with a slick haircut I'd never seen before in my life. I did a quick head count. 1, 2, 3, 11 people. 11. My mom's voice echoed in my head. The house is just too full. So chaotic. It was a lie. A bald-faced, effortless lie. My heart began a low, heavy drumbeat against my ribs. A cold dread washed over me. I kept swiping. The next photo was of the dining room table. It was beautifully set, laden with a massive turkey, countless side dishes, and my mother's famous pecan pie. Every single chair was filled. Laughter caught in motion. Swipe. A picture of them opening gifts. The floor around the tree was a mountain of discarded wrapping paper and boxes. James was holding up a ridiculously expensive-looking watch. Jessica was cradling a designer handbag. My parents were unwrapping a gift basket filled with artisanal cheeses and wine. Swipe. This one was a candid. My dad was laughing, head thrown back, as a small, fluffy white poodle leaped up, trying to lick his face. And the woman I recognized, James's colleague, was laughing beside him. Chloe, that was her name. I remembered it now. Swipe. And there it was. The photo that shattered the last remaining shard of my denial. It was a close-up of the fireplace mantel, decorated with pine boughs and twinkling lights. Hanging from the hooks were the familiar, needle-pointed stockings my grandmother had made years ago. One for Mom, one for Dad, one for James, one for Jessica, and then a new one. A smaller, dog-bone-shaped stocking, store-bought, with the name Sparky embroidered in cheerful red thread. A dog. A freaking dog had a place of honor on the family mantle, while my sons, her actual grandchildren, were 100 miles away because the house was too chaotic. Something inside me didn't just snap. It disintegrated, turned to dust. The part of me that had spent a lifetime making excuses, absorbing disappointments, and always holding out hope that this time would be different. It simply ceased to exist. The deep, persistent sadness I'd been carrying all day didn't just curdle into anger. It flash froze into something much harder, much sharper. It was the cold, clear, diamond-hard certainty that I was done. Completely and irrevocably done. I stood up from the couch, my movements stiff and robotic. I walked to the front door and pulled on my boots and my heavy winter coat. My actions detached, as if I were watching someone else. Dad, where are you going? Sam asked, his eyes never leaving the TV screen. Just outside for a minute, buddy, I said, my voice eerily calm. Be right back. The blast of frigid air on my face was a welcome shock. Felt real. Cleared the fog of hurt from my brain. I walked to the center of my driveway, the fresh snow crunching loudly under my boots. The Honda sat there, a pristine and absurd monument to my own foolishness. The big red bow, which had seemed so festive and hopeful yesterday, now looked like a taunt. I pulled my phone from my pocket. There was no internal debate. There was no hesitation. There was only a cold, swift, and certain purpose. I framed the shot, the whole car, the stupid bow, the backdrop of my modest, loving home. It was a picture that didn't just say gift. It screamed sacrifice. It screamed, look what you threw away. I opened my messaging app. I tapped on the conversation with Mom. I attached the photo, and I hit send. No words, No explanation. Just the image hanging there in the digital space between us. A silent declaration of war. I went back inside. I took off my coat and boots, moving with the same deliberate calm. I sat down on the couch, right between my two boys, and wrapped an arm around each of them, pulling them into my orbit. They leaned against me without a second thought, their warmth a fragile shield against the cold storm I had just unleashed. I stared at the TV, at the bright, meaningless colors, and I waited. It didn't take long. Less than 10 minutes. My phone, sitting on the coffee table, began to vibrate. A frantic, desperate buzzing against the wood. The screen lit up. Mom. I let it buzz. Leo looked up at me, his brow furrowed. Dad, your phone. It's okay, I said, my voice perfectly level. I'll get it later. The buzzing stopped, and for a blissful second, there was silence. Then it started again, and again, and again. It was a relentless, hysterical assault. Buzz, silence, buzz, silence. It was the sound of panic. The sound of someone who had just realized they'd made a catastrophic mistake. I started counting the missed call notifications as they popped up on the screen. 10, 15, 25. It was my mother, the woman who couldn't find time for a single phone call to wish her grandsons a Merry Christmas, now blowing up my phone with the desperate energy of a telemarketer. The sheer, breathtaking hypocrisy of it was almost funny. When the call counter hit 37, it finally stopped. A profound, heavy silence descended on the room once more, broken only by the tinny sounds of the video game. A strange sense of serenity washed over me. I had pulled the pin on a grenade and tossed it into the heart of my family. Now all I could do was wait for the shrapnel to hit. The old David was gone, and the new one was about to have a long overdue conversation with his father. An hour crept by, each minute stretching into an eternity. The initial adrenaline rush had faded, leaving behind a cold, unnerving calm. The sun had finally surrendered to the horizon, plunging the world outside into a deep, blue twilight. The snow in the yard seemed to glow with a faint, borrowed light. Inside, the boys were starting to wind down, their holiday excitement finally giving way to a sleepy exhaustion. They were bickering quietly over whose turn it was to use the game controller, a familiar, comforting sound. I was just about to suggest that pizza and a movie in pajamas were in order when I heard it. The sound of a car engine being cut abruptly. A car door slamming shut. The sound sharp and violent in the winter stillness. It was too aggressive to be a neighbor returning home. I didn't move from the couch. I just sat there, listening. My entire body a coiled spring of anticipation. Heavy, frantic footsteps crunched on the snow-covered walkway. Too fast, too clumsy. Then, a series of hard, rapid knocks on the front door. Bam. It wasn't a polite knock. It was a summons, an alarm. Leo and Sam fell silent, their argument forgotten. They both looked at me, their eyes wide and questioning in the dim light of the living room. "Who's that, Dad?" Sam whispered, a hint of fear in his voice. "It's okay, guys. I'll get it," I said, my voice a mask of calm that I didn't feel. My heart had started a slow, heavy march in my chest, a drummer setting the pace for a battle. "You guys keep playing. It's probably just a package delivery." It was a weak lie, and we all knew it. I stood up, and before I walked to the door, I did something deliberate. I walked over to the small wooden desk in the corner, the one cluttered with bills and school permission slips. The folder from the Honda dealership was right where I had left it. I opened it and took out the key documents. The bill of sale showing the full, shocking price, and the financing agreement, with the $5,000 deposit line item clearly visible. I didn't hide them. I spread them out on the surface of the desk, like a lawyer presenting evidence to a jury. They were a silent testament to the story I was about to tell. Then, and only then, did I go to the door. I took a deep, steadying breath, turned the deadbolt, and pulled it open. My father stood on the porch, a frantic silhouette against the fading purple sky. He was panting, his chest heaving as if he'd run a marathon. He wasn't wearing a jacket, only a thin, gray cardigan over a collared shirt, completely inadequate for the biting December air. His face, illuminated by the porch light, was pale and drawn. His eyes were wide and held a look of pure, unadulterated panic. He must have broken every speed limit to get to my house from his, an hour away. "The picture," he gasped, the words coming out in puffs of white vapor. He didn't say hello. He didn't wish me a Merry Christmas. He just stared at me, his eyes boring into mine. "The car. Is it, David, is it real?" I didn't smile. I didn't rage. I let the coldness I felt inside me settle onto my face like a mask. I looked him dead in the eye and let a beat of silence hang in the air before I answered. "It was," I said, my voice quiet, but each word precise, the emphasis on the past tense as sharp as a razor. I stepped back, holding the door wide open. "You should come in. You're freezing to death." He stumbled past me into the entryway, his eyes darting around my small, tidy living room as if he were a stranger in a foreign land. And in that exact moment, my boys, hearing his voice, came running out from the living room, their faces alight with pure, uncomplicated joy. "Grandpa!" they yelled in perfect unison. They launched themselves at him, each of them grabbing a leg in a fierce hug. For a single, fleeting second, the panic on my father's face was replaced by a flicker of genuine affection. The iron mask of his desperation cracked. "Hey, boys. Hey there," he said, his voice thick and unsteady. He reached into the pocket of his cardigan and pulled out two small, miserably wrapped gifts. The paper was thin and cheap, the kind you buy at a gas station checkout counter. He handed one to each of them. "Merry Christmas from Grandma and me." Leo tore his open with gusto, revealing a neon green plastic dinosaur that looked like it came from a dollar store bin. Sam's contained a small keychain flashlight that was already flickering weakly. The stark, pathetic contrast between these thoughtless, last-minute trinkets and the $18,000 marvel of engineering sitting in my driveway was so profound it almost made me laugh. But there was no humor in it. There was only a deep, bitter sadness as I watched my sons thank him profusely, their eyes shining with an unconditional love he had done absolutely nothing to earn. While he was fumbling with the boys' hugs, I walked into the kitchen and poured a glass of cold water. I watched my hand. It was perfectly steady. The hot, raw anger from the afternoon had cooled and solidified into something else entirely. Something hard and clear and unbreakable. It was resolve. I knew myself. The old David would have been a wreck by now. He would have been apologizing before he even knew what for. He would have been trying to smooth things over, to manage his father's feelings, to take the blame for the whole ugly mess just to make the confrontation stop. But the old David wasn't here anymore. I walked back into the living room and handed the glass of water to my dad. His own hand was trembling so much that the water sloshed over the rim. "They look good," he said quietly, his gaze following the boys as they ran back to their game, proudly showing off their new treasures. "Happy. They're great kids," I replied, my voice level. "They were disappointed about not seeing you guys today, but they're resilient." He flinched at the direct hit. He finally, reluctantly, dragged his eyes away from the boys and met my gaze. The unspoken question hung in the air between us, a tangible thing. He didn't know how to ask it. He didn't know what was happening. All he knew was that he had been summoned by a single cryptic photograph, and the sun, who had always been a predictable, placid lake, had suddenly become a stormy, unfathomable ocean. The silence stretched on, thick with unspoken accusations, with years of casual neglect, with the immense weight of that beautiful, useless car sitting out in my cold, dark driveway. The eye of the storm was over. The real tempest was about to begin. My father finally set the glass of water down on a coaster on the end table. His hand was still shaking. He wouldn't look at me. He found a spot on my worn area rug and stared at it intently, as if it held the key to deciphering this whole mess. "Your mother," he began, his voice so quiet I had to strain to hear it. She's a wreck, David. She's very upset. She doesn't understand. We don't understand. That picture. After everything, it just feels so cruel." A short, sharp, humorless laugh escaped my lips. It was a brittle sound like ice cracking. Cruel, I repeated, my voice dripping with a disbelief that bordered on sarcasm. You want to sit in my house on Christmas Day and talk to me about what's cruel? I turned and walked over to the desk where I had laid out the papers from the dealership. I picked them up, the crisp documents feeling heavy and significant in my hand. I walked back and held them out to him. He took them hesitantly, his brow furrowed in a deep, confused V. His eyes scanned the first page, the bill of sale for the Honda CR-V. I watched his eyes widen as they found the total price, $18,450. Then, his gaze fell to the second page, the financing agreement. I saw the exact moment he registered the line item, the one I had left in plain sight for him to see. Customer deposit, $5,000. What is this? He stammered, looking from the papers to my face and back again. That, I said, my voice low and dangerously even, is my money, Dad. That's $5,000 out of my savings account. An account that was supposed to be my emergency fund. The rest of the 13 grand was a loan. A loan that I was going to pay off every single month for the next 5 years. Also that you and Mom could have a safe, reliable car. Also, I would never again have to see you walking on the shoulder of a highway in the pouring rain, looking like the world had ended. I saw a flicker of shame in his eyes as the memory I'd invoked hit him with the force of a physical blow. I didn't let up. Do you have any idea what it took to save that money? I asked, my voice rising slightly, fueled by a righteous anger that had been simmering for years. I've been working 60, sometimes 70-hour weeks since February. I took every overtime shift at the plant. I spent my weekends, the only time I have with my own kids, mowing lawns for strangers and fixing their leaky faucets until my knuckles were raw. I haven't had a single day off, not one, in 10 months. I have been eating cold sandwiches in my car between jobs because I didn't have time for a real meal. I've been driving around on bald tires, Dad, literally praying I didn't get a flat, because every spare dollar I had went into the fund for this car. I took a deep, shuddering breath. The words were a torrent now, a dam of unspoken resentment breaking wide open and washing over the sterile quiet of the room. I did all of that because you were my parents, and I love you. I did all of that, picturing the look on your faces on Christmas morning when I handed you the keys. I imagined you being proud of me. I imagined you finally seeing me. And what was my reward? What did I get for 10 months of backbreaking sacrifice? I got a phone call, a casual, dismissive phone call telling me that my sons, your own flesh and blood, your only grandsons, were too energetic, that your house was too full for us. He opened his mouth, a weak protest forming on his lips. David, it wasn't like that. Don't. I cut him off, my voice sharp as broken glass. Don't you dare try to explain it away. I know what full means now. I saw the pictures, Dad. I saw them on Facebook for the whole world to see. 11 people crammed onto your couch. Your friends, my cousin, James's colleagues from his fancy office. Strangers, Dad. There was room for strangers. There was room, I said, my voice dropping as the most insulting detail of all rose in my throat. For my brother's wife's co-worker's dog. The word dog came out with a low, guttural hiss. There was room in your home and your hearts to hang a Christmas stocking for a poodle named Sparky. But there was no room for Leo and Sam. I jabbed a thumb toward the living room, where the innocent sounds of the boys' video game were a surreal counterpoint to the raw, ugly truth I was laying bare. Do you hear that? That's the sound of your family. The part of your family that you decided was disposable this year. Tell me, Dad, how do I explain that to them? What words do I use to tell my 10-year-old son that his own grandparents would rather host a stranger's pet than have him in their home for Christmas? Tears were openly streaming down his face now. Not crocodile tears. Real tears of shame and dawning horror. He looked utterly broken, a hollowed-out version of the man I once knew. And for a second, the old, accommodating David felt a pang of pity. But the new David, the one who had been forged in the fire of this latest humiliation, stood his ground. This was a long overdue reckoning. You said my picture was cruel, I said, my voice dropping again, but this time it held an edge of cold, hard steel. No, the picture wasn't cruel. It was information. It was a mirror. It was me showing you the reflection of what you had so casually thrown away. This, I said, tapping the car papers he still held in his hand. This was my respect for you. This was my love. This was my sacrifice. And you deemed it and me and my children unworthy. He looked up at me, his face a mask of pleading desperation. What do you want me to do, David? Tell me what to do. Your mother. She was just trying to keep things simple. Jessica's pregnancy. Simple? The word exploded out of me. There is nothing simple about telling your son he doesn't belong. And don't you dare hide behind Mom or Jessica. You are a grown man. You stood right there and you let her do it. Just like you always do. You have spent my entire life letting her push me aside. Letting her worship James. Letting her treat me like a combination of an ATM and a handyman. And you have never, not once, stood up for me. Because it's easier to keep the peace with her than it is to do what is right. It's cowardice, Dad. That's the simple truth. He flinched as if I'd slapped him. I took a final, deep breath. This was the moment. The point of no return. So, I'm going to make it simple for you now, I said, my voice suddenly devoid of all heat, all anger, all emotion. It was the calm at the center of the hurricane. I cannot give you this car. I will not. Because if I did, I would be teaching my sons that it's okay for the people who are supposed to love them most to treat them like they are worthless. I would be telling them that our family's respect comes with a price tag, and that their grandfather's love is conditional. And I will not do that to them. Their hearts are more important than your convenience. I reached out and gently, but firmly, took the papers from his trembling hand. Tomorrow morning, I'm going back to that dealership, I said, my gaze unwavering. I'm going to cancel the sale. I am going to lose $5,000 that I bled for. And you and Mom can figure out your own transportation. Maybe James can buy you a car with the money he saves on golf clubs. He just stared at me, speechless, his mouth hanging slightly open. The full, catastrophic weight of my words finally seemed to crash down on him. He wasn't just losing a car. He was losing his son. The reliable one. The one who always fixed everything. And this, he was finally, horrifyingly beginning to realize, was a problem I could not and would not fix for him. You should go, I said quietly, my voice soft now, almost gentle. It's getting late. Go say goodbye to the boys. He nodded numbly, a man moving in a daze. He shuffled over to the living room archway, gave the boys a clumsy wave, and mumbled a goodbye they barely heard. Then he walked back to the door, a stooped, jacketless old man, staring out into the cold, unforgiving darkness. He didn't say another word to me. He just opened the door and left, closing it softly behind him, leaving me alone in the ringing, deafening silence of my new, terrifying, and absolute freedom. The next morning, the world outside was deceptively bright and peaceful. The snow glittered, and the sky was a crisp, cloudless blue. But inside my head, a quiet, determined storm was still raging. I did exactly what I said I would. I got the boys ready for a day with Mark and his family. Mark had insisted on taking them, giving me space, and then I drove to the dealership. The cheery holiday music playing over the showroom speakers, the same music that had filled me with such hope a few weeks ago, now felt like a sick, mocking joke. I found Kevin, the young salesman. He greeted me with a wide, friendly smile that faltered when he saw my face. Mr. Henderson, come to pick up the plates? He asked. Something like that, I said, my voice flat. I need to speak to your manager. I need to cancel the sale of the CRV. The smile vanished completely from his face, replaced by a look of genuine confusion and concern. Is there a problem with the car? Did you find something wrong? No, Kevin. The car's perfect, I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. The recipients had a change of heart. It was the simplest, cleanest lie I could muster. He led me to a small, glass-walled office where the manager, A stern-looking man named Mr. Davies sat behind a large, imposing desk. Mr. Davies did not look happy to see me. He reviewed the contract I had signed, his lips a thin, disapproving line. "You understand the terms of the agreement you signed, Mr. Henderson," he said, his tone all business. "It wasn't a question. Your $5,000 deposit is non-refundable. Company policy. No exceptions." "I understand," I said, my stomach twisting itself into a tight, painful knot. $5,000. I saw it in my mind's eye, a stack of $5,100 bills. It was new tires for my car, with enough left over for a proper vacation for the boys, the kind with a beach and an ocean. It was 6 months of groceries. It was my entire emergency fund, gone. Wiped out because of a dog in a Christmas stocking. The absurdity of it was staggering. I signed the cancellation papers where he indicated, my signature looking small and shaky on the page. As I pushed the form across the polished surface of the desk, I felt a strange and dizzying mix of profound loss and profound relief. It was done. It was real. I had paid an exorbitant price, but I had bought back my self-respect. As I was walking out of the showroom, feeling hollowed out and 100 years old, Kevin hurried to catch up with me. "Hey man," he said, lowering his voice and glancing back toward his manager's office. "Listen, I don't know what happened, and it's none of my business, but I'm really sorry. I remember how excited you were when you picked it out. You're a good son." That small, unexpected sliver of kindness from a total stranger almost made me break down right there on the showroom floor. "Thanks, Kevin," I mumbled, and I hurried out into the cold air before he could see the hot tears welling in my eyes. The kindness ended there. The fallout from my family was swift, brutal, and coordinated. By the time I got home, my phone, which had been blissfully silent all morning, began to buzz with a new kind of venom. It wasn't my mother this time. She had dispatched her army. The first text was from my Aunt Carol, my mother's sister and loyal lieutenant. "David, your mother is absolutely heartbroken. I cannot believe you would be so monstrously cruel as to dangle a beautiful gift like that in front of them just to snatch it away. What has gotten into you? This isn't the boy I helped raise." I had barely finished reading it when the phone rang. It was my Uncle Bob. I let it go to voicemail. The message he left was short and full of blustering rage. "David, this is your Uncle Bob. I just got off the phone with your father. I don't know what kind of sick game you're playing, but you need to stop it. You're giving your mother a heart attack. You should be ashamed of yourself." The narrative had been set, and it was spreading like wildfire. In this version of the story, I was the villain, the unstable, spiteful son who had emotionally blackmailed his poor, elderly, loving parents with a car. And my brother, James, the golden child, remained suspiciously silent. Until that evening. He didn't call to ask for my side of the story. He didn't call to see if I was okay. He called to deliver a verdict. "What the hell do you think you're doing, Dave?" he began, his voice cold and dripping with condescension. "Mom is a complete wreck. You are literally tearing this family apart over a stupid Christmas invitation." "It wasn't a stupid invitation, James," I said, my voice dangerously calm, the ice reforming in my veins. "It was them telling me, for the 100th time, that I don't matter as much as you do. Did you know they had a stocking up for Chloe's dog?" There was a brief, telling pause. "Look, things got complicated with the guest list," he said, completely brushing off the most insulting detail. "But this is a massive, insane overreaction. You're acting like a child having a tantrum." "No, James," I said, a strange clarity cutting through my anger. "For the very first time in my life, I'm acting like an adult who respects himself. It's a concept you might want to look up sometime." That's when he showed his true, vicious nature. He didn't just get angry. He got strategic. He hung up on me. And not even an hour later, my Aunt Carol called back, her voice practically vibrating with righteous indignation. "James just sent us all an email. A long one. He told us everything. How you've been unstable and bitter since your divorce. How you have a history of being difficult. How you're trying to control Mom and Dad with money. David, you need professional help. An email. He had crafted a character assassination, filled with half-truths and twisted interpretations of my life, and he had broadcast it to the entire family. It was a calculated, vicious move designed to utterly isolate me and discredit me before I could ever tell my side of the story. It was a checkmate, or so he thought. The final blow, the one that sealed the entire ugly chapter, came from my mother. She must have bought a burner phone, because a text came through from a number I didn't recognize. It was a long, rambling, venomous tirade. I will never forget the words. David, I don't know who you are anymore. You were raised to be a good, respectful son, and you have become a monster of selfishness. You use your own children as pawns in your sick games, and you delight in causing pain. You have made your father, a good man, cry. I will never, ever forgive you for that. You want to punish us? Fine. Enjoy your lonely, bitter life. But don't you dare come crawling back to us when we're gone. And don't expect to be part of this family anymore. We are done with you. I stared at the words glowing on the screen. There was no apology, no sliver of understanding, no hint of remorse. There was only pure, uncut narcissistic rage. She wasn't sad that she had hurt me. She was incandescent with fury that I had taken away her power, that I had refused to play my assigned role. I thought about all the years, all the sacrifices, all the swallowed insults, all the lonely drives home after being casually dismissed. And I realized, with a soul-deep certainty, that it would never ever be enough. Could never be enough. My thumb hovered over the contact. I could fight back. I could type a long, angry rebuttal, defending my actions, detailing their abuses. But what was the point? You can't win an argument with people who are committed to misunderstanding you. They had already tried and convicted me in the court of their own warped opinion. So I did the only sane thing I had left to do. I tapped the block this caller option. A confirmation box popped up, asking, "Are you sure?" A slow smile spread across my face. Yes. Oh yes, I was sure. I pressed the button, and with that one simple anticlimactic tap, I felt a heavy, invisible chain that I didn't even realize I'd been dragging around my entire life simply fall away. The silence that followed was the sweetest, most liberating sound I had ever heard. The weeks following the great Christmas implosion were eerily quiet. The constant, low-grade hum of family drama that had been the background noise to my entire life had suddenly been switched off. The silence was unnerving at first, like the feeling you get right after a loud concert ends. But gradually it transformed into something else. It wasn't an empty silence. It was a peaceful one. It was the sound of calm. My life simplified, shrinking down to its most important components. My work, my home, and my boys. We fell into a new, easy rhythm. We had pancake Saturdays and movie marathon Sundays. We did homework at the kitchen table. We threw a football in the snowy backyard. Without the weight of my family's expectations and disappointments, I felt lighter. I had more energy, more patience. I was a better father. Then, things started to change at work, in a way I never could have anticipated. My boss, Mr. Harrison, was a tough, old-school guy in his late 60s who had built the company from the ground up. He was fair, but he didn't suffer fools and he didn't miss much. A few days after I had officially canceled the car deal, he called me into his glass-walled office. My stomach immediately clenched. I was sure I was in trouble for taking a personal call on the factory floor a few days prior. A final, brief conversation with the dealership to confirm the refund of some minor fees. "Close the door, David," he said, gesturing to the worn leather chair opposite his imposing oak desk. I sat, my mind racing through possible infractions. "I wasn't trying to eavesdrop the other day," he began, steepling his fingers and looking at me over the top of his reading glasses. "But these walls are thin. I overheard part of your conversation. Sounded like you took a big financial hit on something. Something about losing a $5,000 deposit." I felt a hot flush of embarrassment creep up my neck. "I'm sorry, sir. That was a personal matter. It won't happen again." "I'm not asking for the details of your personal life, son," he said, holding up a hand. "That's your business. But I'll tell you what is my business. Character. I've been watching you for 8 years, David. You're here on time every time. You're smart. You work hard. You don't complain. But what I heard the other day told me something new. It told me you're a man who is willing to take a $5,000 punch to the gut to stand on a principle. He leaned forward slightly. In my experience, that's a rare quality. That's integrity. That's the kind of man I can trust with real responsibility. I was floored, completely speechless. The supervisor position for the night shift is opening up at the end of the month, he continued. It's a bigger team, more complex logistics, and a hell of a lot more pay. It's a real promotion, not just a title change. The increase in your annual salary should more than cover whatever financial hit you just took. I think you're ready for it. The job is yours if you want it. I walked out of his office in a complete daze. It was surreal. In the span of a week, I had been emotionally and verbally annihilated by my own family, but I had just earned the deep, tangible respect of a man I admired immensely. It was a bizarre cosmic trade-off, but in that moment, walking back to my station on the factory floor, it felt like I had come out way, way ahead. This promotion wasn't just about the money. It was about being seen and valued for who I was, not for what I could provide. A few weeks later, on a cold New Year's Eve, my father appeared at my door again. This time, he was wearing a proper winter coat. He looked older than he had on Christmas, and profoundly tired, the lines around his eyes etched deeper. He was holding a small paper grocery bag. "Can I come in for a minute?" he asked, his voice quiet. I hesitated for a long moment, then stepped aside. Mark had graciously taken the boys for a sleepover at his house, so the house was quiet. My father sat down at my small kitchen table, the very same table he had always refused to eat at during his rare visits because it was too cramped. He reached into the bag and pulled out 2 large, elaborate Lego sets, the expensive Star Wars ones that my boys had been circling in the toy catalog for months. Then he pulled out a crisp, white envelope. "I know this doesn't fix anything," he said, sliding the envelope across the table toward me. "But I wanted you to have it." I opened it. Inside was a cashier's check for $500. In the memo line, in his shaky handwriting, were 4 words, "For the ones who matter." "Dad, I can't take this," I said, pushing it back toward him. "Please," he said, his voice thick with an emotion I couldn't quite place. It was more than just guilt. It was defeat. "I had a fight with your mother after I left here on Christmas. The worst fight we've had in 50 years of marriage. I told her she was wrong. I told her she had pushed you away for good this time. I told her she had to call you and apologize." He paused, shaking his head slowly. "She just looked at me. No tears. No remorse. Just cold anger. She told me that I was weak, and that you were an ungrateful child. And then she said that she's telling everyone in the family that the car is just delayed due to a paperwork issue, and that you're just having a tantrum, and that you'll be bringing it over as soon as you come to your senses. She's completely delusional, David." It was like looking at a stranger. This was the second twist, a chilling confirmation of my decision. My mother wasn't just angry. She was actively rewriting history, constructing an alternate reality where she was still the benevolent matriarch and I was the petulant child who would eventually come crawling back. "I can't change her," my dad said. His eyes filled with a deep, weary sadness that seemed to age him right in front of me. "I'm too old and I'm too tired to leave. This is the life I've made. But I came here to tell you that I won't defend her behavior anymore. Not to you. I know what she did. And I'm sorry. It wasn't a full victory. But it was something. It was an admission. It was a secret, whispered alliance. It was a sad acknowledgement of the truth from a man trapped on the wrong side of the battle lines. We sat there in silence for a long time, 2 men stranded on opposite sides of a chasm created by the woman we were both supposed to love. The final, predictable test came 2 months later. A thick, cream-colored envelope arrived in the mail. My stomach dropped as I saw my mother's elegant, looping script. It was an invitation to a baby shower. My brother James and his wife Jessica were expecting a baby girl. Tucked inside, on a separate, smaller card, was a personal note from my mother. "Let's put the past behind us for the sake of the new baby," it read. "We're starting a new chapter as a family. And family is always first. It was a trap. A beautiful, perfectly packaged, emotionally manipulative trap. This wasn't an olive branch. It was a summons. A royal pardon was being issued, and I was expected to show up, gift in hand, and pretend nothing had happened. A link to their online registry was included. I clicked on it out of morbid curiosity. They were asking for a $900 stroller, a $400 crib, a $200 diaper pail. My role in this new chapter was crystal clear. I was to be the reliable, forgiving, and most importantly, cash-providing brother and son. The calls started a few days later, a coordinated final assault. First, Aunt Carol, her voice now syrupy sweet. "It's for your new niece, David. A beautiful, innocent baby. You wouldn't want her to grow up without knowing her only uncle, would you?" Then, a call from a new, unknown number. It was my mother. "You don't have to come for me," she said, her voice dripping with fake, martyred sincerity. "I understand if you're still upset with me, but come for the baby. Come for your brother. Don't punish them for my mistakes." Each call was another turn of the screw, another attempt to use guilt and sentimentality to drag me back into the toxic fog. They thought the idea of a new baby, a symbol of family, innocence, and new beginnings, would be the one thing I couldn't possibly refuse. They had fundamentally miscalculated. They didn't realize they weren't dealing with the old David anymore. And the new David had a very different idea of what family first really meant. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time that night, the baby shower invitation lying next to a stack of my own household bills. The contrast was stark. One represented a demand on my resources, cloaked in the language of family. The other represented my actual responsibilities. For a fleeting moment, a ghost of the old guilt tried to whisper in my ear. The word family has a powerful primal gravity. It's a bond that's supposed to be unbreakable. I thought about this tiny, unborn baby, my niece. Was it fair to her that she would never know her uncle because of the sins of her grandparents? Then, I looked up from the table through the archway into the living room. Leo and Sam were on the floor, heads bent close together, working on one of the new, complicated Lego sets their grandfather had brought. My promotion meant I didn't have to work weekends anymore, unless I wanted the overtime. I had time. I had energy. I had peace. I was present for them in a way I hadn't been for almost a year. This was my family. The one that mattered. The one that deserved my loyalty, my energy, my protection, and my resources. The invitation wasn't about a baby. It was about control. It was about them trying to reset the game board to its original configuration, to pull me back into my designated square. The square labeled, quiet, supportive, reliable, invisible David. They hadn't learned a single thing from the explosion at Christmas. They had just waited for the dust to settle before trying a new tactic. They didn't see me as a person. They saw me as a role to be filled. I remembered my mental checklist. Step 1 was returning the car. That was the public statement of my new terms. Step 2 was the silence, blocking their numbers, creating a solid, unbreachable boundary. That was an act of self-preservation. As I sat there, I realized with absolute clarity that there had to be a step 3. This step wouldn't be for them. It wouldn't be about sending a message or seeking revenge. This step was for me. A final, definitive action that would close this chapter forever and begin a new one on my own terms. It wasn't about destruction. It was about redirection. I pulled my laptop towards me and opened the budget spreadsheet I had meticulously created since my promotion. The new, higher salary was there in black and white. So was the money I was now saving by not having a car payment for a vehicle I didn't even own. My eyes fell on the line item I had created, forfeited deposit, minus $5,000. A loss. But what if it wasn't? What if it was the best investment I had ever made? I picked up my phone. I didn't call my father. I didn't call my aunt. I scrolled through my contacts and found the number for Sarah, the no-nonsense financial advisor Mark had recommended to me. She picked up on the second ring. Sarah Collins. "Hi, Sarah. It's David Henderson," I said. "We spoke last week about my new budget." "Of course, David. How can I help you?" I've been thinking about our conversation, I said, my voice steady and clear, filled with a purpose that felt brand new. I'd like to move forward. I want to set up a formal college fund for each of my sons, Leo and Sam. I'd like to make an initial deposit into each account immediately. That's a wonderful, proactive step, David, she said, and I could hear the sound of her typing. And one more thing, I continued, feeling a slow, powerful smile spread across my face. You mentioned you work with a good estate planning lawyer. I'd like his number. I want to set up an irrevocable trust for the boys. I want to make sure that no matter what happens to me, they are secure. That my assets, my home, my savings, my life insurance, that everything goes to them and only to them. I want it locked down. It was the final piece of the puzzle. The ultimate redirection. I was taking all the money, all the emotional energy, all the future planning that I would have wasted on my toxic family of origin, and I was investing it where it truly belonged, in my children. I was building a fortress of security around my little family of 3. I was creating my own legacy, my own inheritance to give. When I hung up the phone, a profound sense of peace washed over me, so complete and total that it felt like I could float. I looked over at the baby shower invitation, at my mother's elegant, manipulative script. Family is always first, it said. I smiled. For the very first time in my life, I was actually putting my family first. My real family. I stood up from the table, picked up the invitation, walked over to the trash can, and dropped it inside. It landed with a soft, satisfying thud. I hadn't destroyed a bridge. I had simply decided to stop trying to cross a bridge that had been on fire for 30 years. I was going to build my own bridge on my own land, leading to a place of my own choosing. And my sons would be right there beside me, hammer in hand, building it with me. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it resonated with you in some way. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to make a difficult choice to protect your own peace? I'd be honored to read your story in the comments below. And if you'd like to hear more, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel so you don't miss what comes next.